The film opens with an army ranger named Ranger Briggs. He's asleep on the floor of his room when a sudden loud noise jolts him awake. Looking worried, he heads to his desk and takes some medicine to ease the pain in his head. Next, we see him working at a fast food joint, quickly handing out orders to customers. Later, while taking out the trash, Jackson talks on the phone with Dorothy, a receptionist at Black Canopy Global Security. He asks her about going on a mission to Pakistan. Dorothy tells him firmly that he can't go because of his mental health issues. Jackson insists he's already sent in his medical report and still wants to be deployed. Dorothy explains that her boss needs to review and approve the report, and reminds him the mission deadline is fast approaching. Afterward, Jackson is shown chopping wood at a cabin. Then he gets a call from Captain Jones, who delivers the grim news that his fellow soldier, Riley Rodriguez, has passed away. Captain Jones asks Jackson to come to the barracks for Riley's memorial. Saddened by the loss of his close friend, Jackson agrees. The next day, Jackson drives to Patton Barracks. Alongside other soldiers, he pays his final respects to Riley. Outside, Jackson helps Captain Jones handle a drunk soldier. During this, he brings up the Pakistan mission again, mentioning that his medical report is clear. Jones, however, ignores him and walks away. The next morning, Jackson is asleep in his car when Captain Jones finds him. He wakes Jackson, telling him to be at the battalion in 30 minutes. Jackson hopes this means his medical report will finally be approved and he'll be sent to Pakistan. He heads to the division, but at the gate, he runs into trouble. His ID card has expired. An argument breaks out with the guards. Captain Jones arrives and confirms Jackson's identity, allowing him inside. Once inside, Jackson meets with Jones, and they walk toward a military room. Jackson thanks him for finally hearing him out. He asks if he can get an interview, but Jones is focused on the mission ahead. They walk down a hallway and enter a room filled with lockers. Jones receives Riley's belongings from another soldier. Jackson notices a photo album with a picture of Riley's dog and asks what will happen to the dog now. Jones says the dog will be a special guest at the family funeral in Nogales this Sunday. Jackson jokes that the dog better not cause any trouble. Jones tells him that now he's responsible for Lulu the dog. Surprised, Jackson asks why. Jones explains Riley's mother wants Lulu at the funeral, and if Jackson safely brings Lulu to Arizona, he'll get the job posting he's been after. Jackson agrees. He and Jones head to see Lulu. Jones warns him that Lulu isn't the friendly dog he once knew and tells him to be careful. Jackson nods and tries to put a leash on her. But the moment he touches her ears, Lulu snaps and attacks. Quick to react, Jackson locks her inside a cage and places it in the trunk of his car. Before Jackson leaves, Jones gives him detailed instructions on caring for Lulu and hands him a book to read. While driving, Jackson calls Dorothy again, reminding her about the mission. Dorothy says she still needs approval from senior officers. Jackson says his captain will call Monday. Dorothy replies that if Captain Jones calls before then, she can fast-track the process. Meanwhile, Lulu starts barking loudly, becoming a real problem. Jackson pulls over and removes her muzzle, thinking she might be uncomfortable. But as soon as the muzzle's off, Lulu lunges and hits him, so Jackson quickly puts it back on. Later, Jackson stops at a gun club to practice shooting, but the loud noise hurts his ears and makes his head spin. Meanwhile, Lulu escapes the cage and damages the car seat. Frustrated, Jackson mixes medicine into her food. The medicine makes Lulu sleepy, and the rest of the drive goes smoothly. At night, Jackson visits the Portlandia Club but doesn't talk to any girls. He returns feeling lonely and mutters that Lulu is his only friend. He tries feeding her by hand, but Lulu only eats when he tosses the food. After hesitating, Jackson strikes up a conversation with some girls and learns they practice tantric yoga. Soon, he's enjoying drinks with them, drawn in by their unusual stories. Jackson shares his army experiences, feeling a flicker of hope that maybe he won't be so lonely anymore. Suddenly, Lulu starts barking loudly. A traveler nearby notices the commotion and approaches the car, concerned. Jackson comes out to calm things down. Lulu jumps out and attacks the man. Jackson tries to pull her back, but the girls get scared and leave Jackson locked outside as they close the door. Jackson and Lulu end up spending the night in the car. The next day they set off again, but Jackson remembers Lulu's unpredictable behavior. Suddenly, Lulu bolts out of the car. Jackson stops quickly and chases after her, following drops of blood on the ground. After a while, he reaches a greenhouse and calls for her. Then, out of nowhere, someone shoots him with a tranquilizer dart. He falls unconscious. When Jackson wakes, he finds himself tied to a chair in an unfamiliar place. A man named Gus asks if Jackson is a spy. Jackson tries to explain he just wants to take Lulu with him, but Gus leaves, telling him to free himself. Jackson manages to break the ropes and escape. Grabbing an axe, he heads toward Gus's house. Inside, he spots Lulu but keeps his distance. Just as Jackson is about to give up, he hears a couple arguing nearby. Surprisingly, Lulu is calmly eating food from Gus's wife's hand. This makes Jackson reconsider. He sets the axe down and enters the room. Gus's wife tells Jackson she talks to Lulu and asks Gus to apologize. She requests some time to care for Lulu and offers food to both men, suggesting they all get along. Outside, they share a meal together. Jackson shows Gus how to escape from zip ties, and as they talk about Lulu, they start to bond. Suddenly, Lulu runs between them. Gus's wife explains Lulu had thorns in her paws but is fine now. She calls herself a psychic and says she can hear Lulu's thoughts. Inside, she tries to understand Lulu's mind and tells Jackson she senses something about his daughter. Jackson doesn't pay much attention but thanks Dumpty and says goodbye. As he continues his trip, he knows only 3 days remain. Jackson buys a toy unicorn, thinking about taking Lulu to a fancy hotel. They check into a hotel where Jackson pretends Lulu is a guide dog to get a free room. That evening, Jackson and Lulu enjoy the luxury. At first, Jackson hesitates to walk with Lulu but then changes his mind. He pretends to bump into the hotel receptionist and maybe tries to ask her out. Suddenly, Lulu spots a Muslim man and bolts after him. Jackson chases after Lulu. Because of this, the hotel discovers Jackson was faking blindness, and he's briefly jailed, putting his mission at risk. In jail, Jackson explains everything to a police officer. The officer understands and releases him after a few questions. Jackson and Lulu continue their journey, growing closer. Next, Jackson visits his wife's house to pick up the unicorn toy for their daughter. But his wife won't let him see their child, leaving Jackson heartbroken. Then he meets Lulu's brother, Noah, and her owner, Louis. Louis is usually distant, but kind to Jackson. They spend time together, and Jackson learns about Louis's life. When they leave, they find their belongings and medicine stolen. Louis helps by letting Lulu sniff Jackson's tag. Lulu follows the scent to an underground shelter where homeless people live. There, they find their things in a tent. Jackson retrieves his stuff, says goodbye to Louis and Noah, and resumes his journey with Lulu. That night, Jackson talks to Lulu, asking her to stay calm during the funeral. Rain begins, and their car breaks down. They take shelter at a nearby mechanic's shop. Later, as the rain intensifies, Lulu refuses to walk, upsetting Jackson. After a while, he returns to talk to her, shows her an episode of Grey's Anatomy, and reads her a poem by Riley. For the first time, Lulu eats food from his hand. At dawn, Jackson runs with Lulu and asks for help to reach his destination on time. After many attempts, a pickup truck finally stops, giving them a ride, though it doesn't take them very far. Then Jackson has no choice but to walk. After a while, Lulu grows tired and lies down on the road. Seeing her in pain, Jackson lifts her onto his shoulders and keeps going until they finally reach the funeral. During the ceremony, Lulu becomes restless and starts barking, so Jackson gently removes her bandage to soothe her. Lulu then walks over and softly rests her head near Riley's shoes, moving everyone to tears. When the gun salute begins and the shots ring out, Jackson comforts Lulu, doing his best to keep her calm. After the funeral, Jackson hands over Riley's belongings to his parents and goes to get the car repaired. While waiting, he calls Captain Jones and feels a rush of happiness when he learns he's been selected for rotation. When Jackson mentions finding a new home for Lulu, Jones reminds him that now it's his responsibility to care for her. Once the car is ready, Jackson drives Lulu to an empty field, hoping to set her free. But Lulu doesn't budge. She stays by his side, even after he removes her bandage. Moved by her loyalty, Jackson decides to keep her. That night, they share a motel room. In the middle of the night, Jackson suffers a stroke. He had shouted too much and neglected his medication. Crawling slowly to Lulu, who watches over him with concern, he finds comfort in her calm presence. Together, they lie quietly, sharing a rare moment of peace. The next day, Jackson takes Lulu to the military base to say goodbye. He walks away at first, but sadness overwhelms him, and he returns. He admits Lulu behaves better when she wears her jacket, and so he chooses to keep her with him. A few days later, Jackson visits Noah's house again to continue training Lulu. He decides to officially adopt her before finally going to see his wife and daughter properly. Jackson feels deeply grateful to Lulu for saving his life and giving him hope. The film closes with Jackson writing a thank you note in the dog's book.